Nancy got an extra day at a bowling tournament due to the accident. Enjoyed her time in Madison. Good to see Ray back. Where's Ray? He wasn't really happy to come back. It was a little bit warmer down in Texas by a degree or two. Just a touch.
I know it's kind of tan.
Yeah.
80 is nice.
Yeah. Grant has a birthday this week.
Ooh.
Yes,
How old?
15.
15.
Oh,
Wow. You know what that means, Mama? You're getting old.
I'm not going to try to
Larry.
No. She's not as old as you are.
You go get the shovel.
Uh-oh.
3 bad puns. Okay, everybody ready? I know this is everyone's favorite part of the service. Just Robin came up to me and says, if I help you out, we can stop the puns. I said, no. She says, then I won't help you out. Pun number 1. I just got caught stealing the calendar. I got 12 months.
He's laughing.
With great reflexes comes great responsibility. Great reflexes comes great responsibility.
You didn't tell that one right. Try it again.
With great reflexes comes great responsibility. Okay, here's the worst one by far. This one is so terrible, people will chuckle anyway. What do you call an academically successful slice of bread? An honor roll. It's bad, but an honor roll. Because academically successful. Yes. When I was teaching these verses once, I got up in front of a church and I didn't realize I was saying, but this set of scriptures start with the but. And they said, this was the biggest but in the Bible. And people started to giggle, and I didn't understand why they were. But it is. Last week, we got thumped by Paul, where basically what he says is, you as people are unrighteous, irresponsible, unresponsive, and unrepentant. Your feet and your mouth and your deeds are wicked. Basically hung it out there. What he was saying is the entire Old Testament points to us being broken and useless and hopeless. But we come into today's verses, and I'm so glad Paul didn't stop there, because he started with the but. The but is not changing us, but changing our circumstances. We as people fall short, but we have a God that makes up for it. When I was in college, we had a test. Now, Karen and I took this class. I'm surprised she still married me after this class because everybody else would get up early and be prepared, and I'd roll out of bed just in time because I thought 8 in the morning was a touch early. And I would come rolling into this class barely. I would have a can of Coke in one hand and sleep in my eyes and unshowered, and I would sit there. And Karen would just shake her head. I can't believe he showed up in class like this. But anyway, I did pretty good in the class. This is the one class that you got better grades than me. Remember this? Yeah.
How'd you do again in your time?
That semester.
The whole year?
Okay. I had English too. But anyway, I get to the test, and this was a class I didn't have to study for. This was, Assemblies of God history or whatever, and usually it was, but this class had Greek words on it. Now, I knew the doctrine, but I didn't know what Greek words meant. And the first Greek word there was charis. Charis. Anybody ever hear the word charis before? I wrote down what you sit on when you pull up to the tablets. You're going to be surprised, but that was wrong. The meaning of the word charis is grace. It's the Greek word for grace. And I mentioned last week that we are broken and fall short of God's grace or God's approval. But these verses open up this understanding of how we become approved by God, and that is through His grace. It is God's grace, period. The law condemns. The law shows us how we fall short. We have plenty of 10 commandments in courthouses throughout our country. We can talk to, you used to be a bailiff at one time, right, Ray? Those 10 commandments, you saw multiple criminals walk in and go, see the 10 commandments and go, I need to change. I now understand everything. So my life will be different from this point on. Yes? No. Not so much. We think that rules will get us results. The law does not equal righteousness. The law exposes unrighteousness. Just says we're in trouble. But that's when God shows up. And what He does is through His sacrifice, His activity in our lives, He allows us and makes us righteous through faith in Him. It is righteousness that is bestowed upon us. Not something we earn. Not something we achieve. One guy put it this way. Could you imagine how awful heaven would be if we could earn it? Think about it. I'd be there and I'd go, hey Greg, I got a bigger mansion than you do because I was better than you are. I said to Kevin this morning, I was in church last Sunday because I love Jesus more than you do. He goes, no, it means I was smarter than you, didn't take my life in my own hands. But I said, no, I trust Jesus to bring me back and forth from church. What? Even with my tribe. But do you understand how awful that would be? We'd get to heaven and we would argue over who was the best, and why don't we get this, and why should I have that? And how come Grant gets the nice birthday presents? Like Miles is going to be bitter for at least a week. Because you like Grant better than me. It's the other way around.
He's got a really big head.
Miles is looking at him. It's just true. But it's grace. We are not here because we've earned it. We are here because God grants it. Let me tell you, this is my problem with Lent, with Ash Wednesday, with this whole period of mourning. It is almost taught that the grace of God is triggered by us being humble. Do you see the problem with, I'm going to be humble? Even that statement. I'm thinking about writing a book, Humility and How I've Obtained It. What do you think? Do you think it'd be a good seller? I'm so thankful I'm more humble than you are. Just those words don't work. If you're talking about being humble, you're probably not. And we go through these things of saying, oh, from dust I came and dust I will return. Well, not really. I came from Jesus, and to Jesus I'm going to return. Do you realize I'm going to die, but I'll never be dead? Because the minute my eyes close on this earth, they open in heaven. The whole Ash Wednesday thing falls apart when you're walking with Jesus. The mere start of that walk with Jesus, we indicate that we are not worthy. But we accept the righteousness that He provides for us. Why would we walk with our head down? Why would we wear sackcloth and ashes when His whole purpose for coming was for our salvation? Lent. You're not supposed to say hallelujah during Lent. Did you know that? Why? Does God's love and grace and power stop during Lent? I guess it might. You're supposed to deny yourself of certain foods. Yes, Jesus smiles in heaven when people eat just fish on Friday. You know what? I know people that actually enjoy Friday fish fries. So if it's not a sacrifice, should you really be eating at a fish fry? Yeah. Are you understanding me? We pick up a lot of these traditions and we forget about what the whole process is supposed to be, and that is Christ is available right here, right now, for us to walk with Him. Do you remember once they asked, the people asked Him why His disciples didn't fast, and He said this, why should they fast? You don't fast when the bridegroom is with you. Why would we celebrate a period of time that has already been answered by the grace of God? Is Jesus not in your heart? Has He not touched your life? Is He not present everywhere you go and whatever you do? Then what's the mourning about? See, I ask these questions to myself all the time. we are at the point right now where God is saying, I want to come to you. Yes, for all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. But that's not the end of the story. Because you are not hopeless. You have hope in me. And I will be present in your life because that's what I decided to do. Wasn't anything you earned. Wasn't anything you've done. It's my love for you. We don't like that, though. Some of you know what it is because you don't like it when people do things for you. Makes you uncomfortable. People aren't supposed to be, I'm supposed to be nice to them. They're never supposed to be nice to me. I will help them move, but they never have to help me because, somehow there is a joy that we received by just doing everything for ourselves. And Jesus looks at you and says, well, Sparky, that ain't the way it's going to be. Because you need me. Period. It's grace. It's grace alone. It's God's grace. That's how it works. Scripture put it this way. You are saved by grace, so nobody can boast. How are you here this morning? Well, because God called me. Not because I earned it. Not because I'm a charter member. Not because I've been here longer than anybody else. It's because that grace of God is still alive and relevant in my life, and it sets me apart. Grace, period. I like that. You know why? Because I know what an idiot I am, and I don't have to count on me anymore. Carrie, I bet you're tired of feeling guilty from time to time because I should have, I could have, I would have, and then all of a sudden you realize, but I didn't. Guess what? Jesus knew that long before and loves you anyway, just like he loves me when I don't reach the level of acceptance that I believe I should have been. It's him. And the more I can breathe, the more like him I become. I don't walk around with guilt anymore. There are times when I make mistakes and I go to God and I go, oh God, I messed up. And it's almost like God says to me, you think? I'm not surprised. The only thing that catches me a little off guard is that you are. Don't you know I love you anyway? Breathe. Breathe. That's what this verse says. I know you're not perfect, but you're perfect for me, Jesus would say. God didn't come to save those who are broken. He came to save broken people just like us. People who aren't sick don't need a doctor. People who aren't sinners don't need Jesus. So we come with our brokenness, we come with our mistakes, we come with everything, and we place them at his feet. And he makes us well. Thursday night, my Thursday night Bible study changed quickly when one lady very quietly, but loud enough for the entire group to hear, said, I don't like my marriage. marriage. Her husband was sitting right there. She says, I believe I'm doing everything. He's not showing up. Another lady across the table began to cry. Lady over here said, you know, I was struggling with my marriage just like yours about 6 months ago. And I began to pray, and God was showing me that I needed to change me. A little girl across the table said this, I led her to Christ last week. Okay? A little girl across the table says this. She says, you know, I was struggling with my marriage last night. And for the first time, I started to pray. And God told me to stop praying for my husband and start praying for myself, because my attitude needed to change. Then the husbands began to join in. And one husband said, my wife and I had to talk about this last night, and we're in the same boat. And another husband said, you know what? This is what caused me to start paying attention to Christ. What stunned me about the entire group was the entire group came to a point where they said, you know what? We're broken. We need Jesus. And Carol went, oh, I don't believe they said those things. And I was excited, Carol, about the fact that people could be so open and lay themselves out and saying, you know what, I'm falling short. And what was determined at the end was both husbands and wives needed more Christ in their lives. They needed to pay attention to one another. They needed to talk. None of those couples were dating. Because I asked them. I said, when was the last time you had a date? Oh. Do you realize, husbands and wives, that you need to continue to date? Because if you don't, you tend to drift. Time in a different place, specifically spent to get closer together. This is where Jesus works. God never works with perfect people. You know why God doesn't work with perfect people? They don't listen. They have all the answers. But broken people, God says, those are the ones I can use. I want to go back to the Old Testament. Day of Atonement. People come together and they're going to offer a lamb for the forgiveness of sin for all of Israel. And they gather, and 2 lambs are brought forth. And one is offered as a sacrifice, and the other one is set free, which is, okay, you are now free because this lamb took the sin of all of Israel, and they'd all gather on the countryside and they would cheer. Problem with me with the Day of Atonement was this. How long did that atonement last? Think about it. Yay, we're free from sin for the whole last year. Do they get home before wrong thoughts and bad attitudes? I mean, you were set free from sin probably for a nanosecond. But here's where the symbolism works. Of those two lambs, which one was Jesus? You're right, both of them. And not only was he the lamb that was sacrificed, he's also the one that was set free. And that's exactly what happens in our lives. Is Jesus dies for our sin and lives within our hearts. I think that's pretty cool. That our relationship with Christ starts at the cross, but it doesn't end there, because he lives within us forever. We don't need to wear sackcloth and ashes anymore. Why? Because we have been set free. And that righteousness of God, by God, through God, is present in our lives. And will be there, how long? A year? Maybe 10 years? Wait, how about try forever? Because when we're connected to Christ, that love and that grace never ends. Amen? Stand with me. Jesus, we come before you and we ask, Lord God, that we would recognize your grace. God, there are some of us who are dealing with guilt. Some of us who are, God, hurting in body. Some of us who are frustrated with life. And God, right now we ask that your presence would free us. That Jesus, we would enter into that relationship with you that changes everything. That you would take our brokenness and begin to do a work in our lives. That the world around would look at us and say, I don't know how it happened. Jesus, we trust in you.